Ohio. Borderlands is one of my favorite franchises of all time, with Borderlands 2 being one of my most favorite games of all time. And despite what the goddamn Philistines of the modern day internet say, Borderlands was, and still is, incredibly funny. People who say it's just like the modern Marvel or Rick and Morty humor of today, I reject that goddamn statement. Borderlands 2 is fucking hilarious, and the only people who say things like that are the fucking retards of today who think whatever the hell this is peak comedy.
Hey, buddy, it's me, Roland. Let's kill Handsome Jack and then we'll all go out for milkshakes.
No, I'm just playing. He's still really dead. Grabbed his echo unit when I left. Just wanted to tell you that Lilith is doing a bang-up job charging the vault key for me. The warrior will be awake in no time.
Regardless, Borderlands 4 is pretty much all but confirmed. I'm pretty sure Mr. Pitchford himself has even said that Borderlands 4 exists, and of course it is. Why wouldn't they? It makes a lot of money. So, as a fervent enjoyer of the Borderlands franchise, I've compiled a small list of things I would like to see in it. Because Borderlands 3, it's a good game. I'm not going to say it isn't. I actually quite enjoyed it. I have a lot of time put into it. Its story is less than ideal, but I think almost everyone can agree on that. But I think its gameplay might just be the best in the series, and while it's still not my favorite game, I of course can acknowledge the things it does well and the things it does wrong. And I think there's a lot it can improve upon, and this is basically what that list is, to make Borderlands 3, but at its absolute best, pretty much. So I'm going to start this list off with something simple. Return of older weapons. Now, this might take some explanation. So in Borderlands 3, let's just use Maliwan as an example. They lost their rocket launchers. In exchange, they got new shotguns. So their weapons are now SMGs, sniper rifles, pistols, and shotguns. But then we go and look at something like Tediore, which have SMGs, pistols, and shotguns, and that's it. Despite the fact in the previous game they also had rocket launchers, but now here they completely just lost a weapon type and got nothing to replace it like Maliwan did. And same with Hyperion as well. They lost their pistols, they just have snipers, shotguns, and SMGs. I would like to see the return of some of these older weapons, like give Tediore their rocket launchers back, give Hyperion their pistols back, and fuck it, why not give Maliwan the rocket launchers back, and then they can have 5 weapon types. And then while we're just on the topic, why not add new weapon types into these manufacturers? Like, give Hyperion assault rifles. I don't see how that would interfere with their weapon gimmicks at all, like the reverse recoil or new shields. I think that would fit in just perfectly fine. And fuck it, why not give Jacobs a rocket launcher as well? It can look like the volley gun from Bioshock Infinite. That would go pretty hard at too, I think.
He said, "Hing dong pong burn has been a I'll never forget that.
Legendaries might just be one of my biggest gripes in Borderlands 3. Let's turn back time a bit. Do you know how many legendary SMGs are in Borderlands 2? 5. There are 5 legendary SMGs in Borderlands 2. Now, just from a quick Google search that I'm not going to fact check in any way, it says that there are 46 legendary SMGs in Borderlands 3. Now, how many of those are actually useful and aren't just silly gimmick weapons that exist just to be silly gimmick weapons? Now, I'm not saying Borderlands has never had those. Borderlands 2 has a lot of silly gimmick weapons, but instead of putting them in the legendary tier, they just instead put them in the more very specific blue tier, what would you call them, unique weapon category. So they weren't legendary, so they weren't super difficult to get. So if you wanted a funny gimmick weapon, you could get it fairly easily with some exceptions. And then the actual good weapons that you would actually want are then relegated to the legendary tier status. And it just feels like a lot of bloats. Like in general, if I just look it up, it says Borderlands 3 has 252 legendaries. Do you really need that much? Especially with how common they are. I also don't like that either, how common legendaries are in Borderlands 3. It kind of takes some of the fun out of grinding away at it, and it just makes the weapons feel ultimately less valuable. Especially more so when, like I said, most of the legendaries in Borderlands 3 are not very good gimmick weapons. So just some quality over quantity would be nice. And I'm not saying Borderlands 3 doesn't even have good legendaries. Some of the ones that come to head are like the Plasma Coil, the Hellwalker. Those ones are perfectly fine and work very well in a lot of builds, but some other ones just don't need to exist in the games.
I must say, you've done a tremendous job, Vault Hunter. Once you become the champion, you are personally invited to a wine tasting at my summer home in the Highlands. Oh, and please do not invite Sir Reginald. After conversing with him further, I discovered that he is violently racist.
Alright, this one's gonna be quite the boomer take, but it's one I'm gonna die on because I feel very passionate about it. The skill tree in Borderlands 3, it works very different from the ones in the previous games, and it's because the characters have multiple action skills, and so to accommodate for this, instead of having skills that modify those action skills, instead there are these like side perks you get once you develop into the tree that you can then equip like a loadout, and that's what modifies the skills. And I don't really like it as much as the original system. Because of this new way that it works, the skills in Borderlands 3 kinda suck ass, not gonna lie. Now, I get why a lot of the skills in Borderlands 3 are like this, since you can have multiple subclasses equipped. You can't always have the skills modify a specific action skill because you might not have that one equipped, but you still need to spend your skill points. Though they do still do this sometimes, especially with characters like Zane. His skills affect his action skills quite a bit, but that's because he can have two at once, so you're more likely to just have them. And also, the skills in Borderlands 3 just aren't that interesting. Like, take Russian Offensive, for example. You can sprint and shoot at the same time, and you gain lifesteal when doing so. I mean, that's cool, it's useful, I use it on my most, but it's not nearly as sexy as something like Critical Ascension, Money Shot, or
Anarchy!
And a lot of skills in Borderlands 3 are very like hyper specific. It's always like if you do X, then Y happens, which I feel like a lot more passive skills that Borderlands 2 and say the pre-sequel had are a lot more better, like Jack's leadership in the pre-sequel. When one of your digiclone dies, it activates all your kill skills. You don't have to do anything. In fact, just by moving around, your Jacks will instantly die and then redeploy next to you, which automatically activates your kill skills, which is very strong. Or something like Axton's Grit, where when you die, you just have a chance to say, nah, fam, and then just don't die. I mean, besides that one skill I named, can you name a skill in Borderlands 3? Because I can't. Unless you count Rush, but that's a byproduct of other skills in Borderlands 3 that Amara has, and that's not actually a skill in and of itself. And to this day, I still don't know how Rush works. I use it in my build, I don't really get it, but I think it's doing what it's supposed to do, but I couldn't really tell you. I feel like there's a lot more beauty in simplicity. Like, instead of just having to proc a bunch of things at once to deal a shit ton of damage to the boss, just spec into Bore and then hit the boss at a funny angle like this, and you just win. In fact, I don't really like a lot of the build crafting in general in Borderlands 3 because it involves a lot of, what would you call it? A lot of procking. Is that the term the Gen Alphas use when they're talking about looter shooters? That, and it requires a lot of god rolls. In Borderlands 2, you never really needed god rolls. They sure helped. I mean, damn, if you got 94% shame shield, you were big pimpin', but it wasn't necessary for the shame shield to be good, you know? You could do just as well with an 80% or higher. It was perfectly manageable. The only real god roll weapon you needed was the double penetrating Unkempt Herald, but that was pretty easy to get if you just farmed the Torg vending machines. But in Borderlands 3, if your weapon does not have the right anointment, it might as well just be fucking useless, which is taking the Destiny turn, and I don't like that because I hate Destiny's loot. With Destiny, if you don't have the right perks on a weapon, you might as well just get rid of it. Like, a weapon is literally F tier or S tier depending on the random rolls you get, and I just don't like that. One of the biggest offenders that I use because I play Amara is her 250 phase cast anointment weapons, where you equip the phase cast action skill, then you get the randomly rolled weapon with the 250 phase cast, where I should probably explain that, deals 250% more damage after you phase cast, and then you get that one Amara skill where you can use your action skill twice, and so you use it twice, you get that effect twice, so it's 500%, and then you just melt bosses, and I don't care about that. I just want to return to the old days of easily fighting bosses, like just getting the Grog Herald and with Money Shot, and then just holding down your left and right triggers and you win. Is this boomer of me? This feels like a really boomer take. I know some people probably really like the new skill tree system in Borderlands 3, and that's fine. You can like that. I think this might just be a really boomer take for me, to be honest. I might just be quite the boomer and want to return to the old ways, but I just found the much more simplistic approach to the progression in Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel to be a lot more entertaining.
And I need one more 3, and then I can get it all the way up to 9.
You're such a fucking whore game. You're such a goddamn whore.
What happened?
So I'm not on Elden Ring anymore. I'm on Borderlands 2, trying to farm a conference call. I got a conference call. Guess what? It's a fucking slag conference call. Well, time to hard close the game. While we're on the topic of talking about skill trees and all that, I want to bring up something about, well, what would you call it? The combination of storytelling and gameplay, where you can really feel a character's character in their gameplay. Like, let's look at Zane here. Best served cold. Killing an enemy creates a nova on you, dealing cryo area skill damage. Or, really expensive jacket, reduces the duration of elemental stat effects applied to you. Literally none of that tells me about Zane as a character. Let's look at Jack from Borderlands the pre-sequel. This man has a skill where you get an insane amount of bonuses if you have Hyperion specific equipment equipped. You gain bonuses by having your underlings die. You literally deal more damage when you pick up money. That describes Jack really well as a character and is shown in gameplay very well. And a lot of the skills in Borderlands 3 are just like stat boosts, like killing an enemy grants grenade regeneration for a short time. I'm like, cool. Who does that help? That's not very interesting.
Bitch ass! Oh, crap! Crack! Tape! Suck!
I got a specific bone to pick with this one in particular, because it really pissed me off in both Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. So, the bosses in Borderlands 2, you can kill. The time they take to kill them is entirely dependent on you. They die as fast as you deal damage, and that's it. Once they're dead, they're dead. There might be a few exceptions, but none are coming to mind. There are two very specific exceptions, but I'll get to them in just a moment. The bosses in Borderlands 3 have a lot, and I mean a lot, of invincibility phases where they like have to phase swap to get more powerful or something, and during that time you just can't damage them. And Borderlands 2 had two very specific moments of this, the bunker and the warrior. But these two are very specific, and let me tell you why. Those two bosses are very big, and they move around a lot, primarily outside of the map. And because of that, you can't just kill them instantly. You can get them down to 1 point of health, but they don't die right away. And that's because they have to reposition themselves to a point where the loot won't fall off the map, and then you can just tap them once and they die. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I get why that exists. It's a safe measure to ensure the loot doesn't fall out of the map. Okay, fine. So why the hell does fucking Burning Man Tron 9000 here in Borderlands 3 have a literal goddamn ad break, and the stupid Unicorn Knight twat from Wonderlands just turns invincible for no reason and does a stupid spinny attack that, if I'm remembering correctly, ricochets shots back at you and deals a lot of damage? Like, why? Why do these two exist? What reason? I hate these two specific bosses in particular because they are just massive time wasters. Just let me kill the boss as fast as I want. I'm trying to get items here. I need very specific stuff to complete my build here. Please stop artificially lengthening the time that it takes to kill these bosses. Just let me kill them. I just want them to die. Like I said, the bunker and the warrior had very specific exceptions to this, and I can understand why. There's no exceptions for these two, or any of the others, like the first vault boss in Borderlands 3. Why did this guy just have to turn invincible, scream, and pull out wings? Why can't I just one-shot him if I want to? It's probably why my favorite boss in the base game of Borderlands 3 is the second one, Grave Ward, and the Eden 6 one, that one. Because you know why? It doesn't have an invincibility stage. I can kill that motherfucker as fast as I want to and move on with my life. Going back to Destiny, you know what I hate about Destiny is how you have to solve a goddamn physics equation in order to start the damage phase of a boss. I really, really don't like that. But I guess that's Destiny's main gimmick, is like solving puzzles and stuff to figure out how to damage the boss. I guess it's just not for me. I like just shooting the boss, and that's it. Which really just goes to show just how great Borderlands 2 is. Borderlands 2 really is the best looter shooter of its time, and I say that wholeheartedly. This Borderlands 2 walked, so every game after it in the genre could fall flat on its face. I genuinely believe no game has ever topped Borderlands 2 yet in the genre, and I don't think they ever will, no matter how good Borderlands 3 is. So let's stick with a bit more gameplay for a while, and then I want to swap to some story stuff to talk about. But for now, let's talk about new types of weapons. Like I already talked about the return of older weapons like Maliwan rocket launchers and such, but let's get some new weapons, ones that haven't existed in the franchise before, like grenade launchers. We've kind of had that with like Torg assault rifles, and I think Jacob's ones as well, but like unique grenade launchers that are just their own class with their own loot and their own legendaries and their own SDU upgrades and such. Now, let me talk about melee for a second in Borderlands, because melee is weird. So there's no specific melee weapons in the games, but there are characters who excel specifically in melee, like Krieg, Zero, and probably somebody else. But the melee works weird in this game, because melee, the damage of it, scales with your level. Every time you level up, your melee damage goes up. But once you hit max level, that stops increasing. But there are ways to continue to make it stronger, like bayonets on weapons, roid shields, slag, if you want to use that. There's probably other stuff that I'm forgetting. But in Borderlands 2's case, specifically, when you get to the OP levels, you're technically leveling up, the enemies are leveling up, your gear is leveling up, but your main level is not going up. So everything else is getting stronger, but your melee damage isn't. It's kind of plateauing. And this isn't so much of a problem in Borderlands 3 or the pre-sequel, but I feel like a great way to remedy this is to just make melee weapons a thing, like specific dedicated melee weapons. And hell, you can give each manufacturer their own type of weapon to match their gimmick. Like Hyperion, they could have like a sword and shield to match theirs, because, you know, with Borderlands 3, they have the new face shield mechanics. You can give them one. With Torg, you can give them fucking Magenhild from Ruby or whatever the hell. Jacobs, give them a pimp cane that can swing as fast as you can pull the trigger. Why not just get crazy with it? Because melee is just kind of the most boring way to play these games. I've never really done a melee build in Zero, because I think that's just the worst way to play him. Even like, no matter how much you spec into it, you're still fighting an uphill battle, and there's just a lot easier ways to play the game. So I feel like actually making a dedicated melee system would make it a lot more interesting. This last point will be the bit of a connecting point between gameplay and story. Tiny Tina has been a character that Borderlands has really almost turned into their mascot. Maybe not so much as Claptrap, but she's definitely second place in terms of how recognizable the character is, that and maybe Jack as well. And I am so honestly shocked that she was not a playable character in Borderlands 3. It really surprised me, considering just how much people love Tina. And I mean, now she's even got a whole spin-off game based off of her own DLC from Borderlands 2. And so I would be really surprised if Borderlands 4 doesn't have her as a playable character, with just how much she's been built up recently since Borderlands 2. Now, I have no doubt that Borderlands 4 is going to have unique Vault Hunters to play as, and that's cool, but it would be really cool to see her as a playable character finally, after almost, Borderlands 2 came out in 2012? Over 12 years to finally see her in action. I don't know how her gameplay would be whatsoever. I'm not a game designer, but probably something explosive based and lots of annoying colors that are overstimulating, but shit, I'd be down for it. Once again, perhaps another controversial statement, but I am just really jacked out. Handsome Jack is probably my favorite villain in gaming. He's very good, very hilarious. Damien Clark does a very good job with him that I don't think anyone could ever replicate. But man, just leave it at that. I was happy to see him return in Borderlands the pre-sequel, and I feel like his character was done really well there, and even in Tales from the Borderlands he was really good. But just Borderlands 3, man, it just would not let go of him. I mean, the Calypso twins are basically, what if we just did Jack again but gave him the most god-awful haircut known to man? And then they just release a whole DLC about him. That's like probably my least favorite out of the four. It's just one of those things you can't replicate, you know? He was very special, and I feel like the Jack DLC in Borderlands 3 just tried so really hard to just reference everything funny about Jack that people liked, and it just felt really forceful, and like they were just really trying to capture the nostalgia, and just let Jack die. Just let him stay gone. The only thing I would like to return of him is Timothy Lawrence. And they can keep Damien Clark as a voice actor, because I've heard Timothy's original voice and I really don't want to have to hear that again.
Oh yeah, that's me, Timothy. Please go through the door to your right. Your interviewer will be waiting for you.
Do I, need to sign some papers, or?
Through the door, please.
No, wait, how do I know this isn't some scam to get my kidneys?
All in all, let's just move on. I mean, shit, for the next villain, let's just go with, like, General Knox or something again, where he's just very sarcastic and dry and wants to kill himself. That'd be really funny. Because I feel like Borderlands is falling down the Far Cry trap, where they did one a really good villain, and then they spend the rest of them just trying to do it again, but worse. But at least in Far Cry's case, they at least got pretty close with Pagan Min, and I feel like with Borderlands, they haven't had a good villain since Jack. They had one villain I liked, but we'll get to that one in a bit.
Oh, get over it. I shot one baby. And in fairness, it was being a dick.
This one's just for me. I would just personally like to see this one, but I really like to see... Jesus Christ, I can't speak. I would really like to see the return of two specific characters, Captain Scarlet and Butcher Rose. Because, well, I'm surprised we haven't seen Scarlet at all yet, and Rose is probably my favorite antagonist from Borderlands 3, and they're both, like... They have, like, the same type. They're both, like, DLC characters from the one DLC that's, like, completely original. And then they just kind of both disappear off the face of the earth at the end of their respective DLC. And, like, seeing them, like, appear in the game as, like, a dynamic duo teaming up, I think that'd be pretty cool. This is just, like, a fan service thing that I specifically want, but isn't likely to happen. But, you know, at least seeing, like, one of them return would be cool. It could be just be, like, a B-plot that doesn't actually have anything to do with the main story. Or, hell, it could be its own expansion where the two DLC villains reunite in this one DLC that's also completely original. I mean, that'd be pretty cool.
Explosive!
Alright, I'm gonna keep it a $1.50 with you. I did not care for 90% of the side missions of Borderlands 3. I could not tell you what happens in most of them, if any of them at all. And I think that's because most of the side missions in Borderlands 3 are just like one-off stories that feature a completely new, unnamed, and no unique model character that doesn't appear anywhere else in the game besides this one side mission, which I really don't like. I much preferred Borderlands 2's in the pre-sequels take, where most of the established actual characters that you give a damn about are the one handing out missions and, like, side objectives for you to do. Because I couldn't tell you the names of anyone who gives you a side mission in Borderlands 3, but, like, I could tell you all of them from Borderlands 2. Because it really helps develop these characters, especially ones that don't appear in the main story too often, and also helps build upon the story. I mean, shit, it's through the Borderlands 2 side missions that we learned about the 6 sirens, the 6 galaxies, and weird, just nothing lore drops like that eventually become a big deal in a later game. I know that's probably bad storytelling, but I thought it was really funny, and I would like to see more of it.
You're a savage! You're a maniac! You are a bandit! And I am the goddamn hero!
Alright, now, this might be the most controversial of them all, but I think Borderlands 4 should take a less comedic approach with its next game. Borderlands is trying to have its cake and eat it at the same time. It wants to have a really, really deep lore with things like the sirens and the iridians and the vaults and all that, but it also really wants to be super funny, ha-ha, fart, butt jokes, poopy shit.
We kidnapped your scientist. If you want to see her alive, it's not gonna happen. Yeah, 'cause you eat butts. Skag butts.
I don't know if it can have both at the same time. It's certainly trying, I can tell you that much. But let's go back to Bounty of Blood. Bounty of Blood in Borderlands 3 is so good. It is easily the best DLC. I love it to bits. It's the only reason I load the game back up anymore these days, is because I just really like Bounty of Blood. And I think the reason that is because the main story for Bounty of Blood is almost completely serious. There is very little humor in Bounty of Blood. There is in the side missions, but the side missions are shit. We can just ignore those. I don't do them anyway, especially since I'm already max level. But the main story for Bounty of Blood takes itself very seriously, and it's really, really good. And its final boss is easily the best in the entire game. You want to know why the Ruiner is the best boss fight in the entire game? One, because it's pure fucking vibes. I mean, have you seen this thing? The giant crystal turtle. Let's fucking go, champ. But also, it doesn't have any goddamn invincibility stages. You can kill this motherfucker as fast as you want and get on with your day. I'm trying to farm iridium here, motherfucker. Can you please stop going invincible? Well, thankfully he doesn't do that. I feel like if the game wants to have all this deep lore and stuff, I think it needs to just start taking itself more seriously, or at least tone back on the humor. Maybe go back to like Borderlands 1, where it's like mostly serious and characters are just being sarcastic and giving out dry humor every now and then. I feel like that'd probably be the safest approach and probably the least annoying, especially in contrast to Borderlands 3, which is just annoying at all times, all the time.
Beatbox time! I'm the Necromancer, and I'm here to say... Ah, screw it! It just ain't the same!
Just don't do it, man. Just don't ever do it. Just don't even think about it. Don't look back on it. This thing doesn't have to exist. It's not canon. It's just don't look at it. It's not there. Don't look at it. Go away. You're not there. You don't exist. Go away. Alright, that's about all I got. Borderlands 3 has almost all the makings to be the best looter shooter of all time, but it's held back by a lot, though it does progress in almost just as many fields as well, so I think it balances itself out almost perfectly, but not quite. And I feel like there's just a few little dents Borderlands 4 can work out, and it could potentially be even better than Borderlands 2. It's gonna be fucking hard, but I think they can do it if they just really give it their all. But that's about all I got. This is just a personal wish list of things I would like to see in the game. Most of it probably won't make it in, and that's fine. This is a wish list after all. I'm not expecting even half these things to appear, but like, if it did, it would at least appeal to me, and I am God's strongest soldier and the main character, so, you know, appealing to me is your best option. That's about it. That's all I really got. And remember, kids, if you play as a female in the Saints Row series, you are canonically a transvestite, because the main character is the same person across all 4 games, and you can only play as a male in Saints Row 1. Alright then. Bye-bye now.